Once the motor's out, I just put a 2x4 and a 1x4 up underneath the bell housing on the sway bar to keep the transmission up. And I got a 2x4 underneath the passenger manifold. And laid alternator and stuff down in there. Just be sure and watch to make sure not to put a hole through the radiator. And you can bolt a piece of metal on a torque converter if you want to move it around any, so it doesn't walk out. Kind of got the bell housing propped up, so the torque converter should stay laid back in there. That'd be a mistake if it comes out and you try to tighten the engine down to the bell housing with it out. And it's not seated in the pump tabs back in there. Went ahead and took the 13 or so odd oil pan bolts out of it. See a little bit of the cam there. And you always expect to find some kind of residual crud in the bottom of the oil pan. But I don't know if there's an update for that valve or not. The shield on it. And the oil pan gasket originally is riveted to the oil pan, and the rivets have to be drilled out. To get them ready to a minute. But I'm going to go ahead and take this oil pickup tube with a 13mm nut off of it there, and here it's fastened to the windage tray, and then this 10mm going into the oil pump. Taking the 4 10mm bolts out of the oil pump. It's got a little key in the edge of it there. I'm going to take a 24mm socket and unthread this variable cam timing actuator out of the cam sprocket and actuator setup. It has to be replaced with a new one every time. It's not reusable. This is a key way for the drive for the oil pump and the sprocket, and the timing marks are pointing to each other offhand while I'm taking it apart. There's a dot on the side of the gear there, and an arrow on the cam sprocket. Now, before this comes off, all this has to be held together, and the sprocket and this center part pulled together as one piece, and they should stay together and not be separated by no means. There's a spring inside there that'll get loose and it'll ruin it. So it all has to pull it with by the gear and the center together. Offhand, the timing chain tensioner part didn't like this actuator being impacted, and of course it was cracked anyway, and it just kind of come apart, so it's getting a new one anyhow. I'm going to go ahead and release these 10mm bolts here and get that mess out of there. Get it loose anyway. I've loosened these tensioner bolts. I'm going to go ahead and take this actuator out. And lift up on the chain while holding the back side and holding these two halves together. And remember this locating dowel pin right here, and that it locates on one of these inside here, pointing. I got the timing mark pointing down, and dowel pins to the right, so it'll line up with this one here. Yep. I'll set that off someplace nice and clean. I'm going to take a T40 Torx bit and remove the 4 Torx bit bevel headed screws holding the truss plate to the block. Feel free to move the timing chain tensioner at any time, and or the crank sprocket if you're putting new timing chain and gears on it. On the back of the truss plate is likely another seal that needs ordered for the truss plate. Seals the lifter gallery, oil jacket. You gotta be real careful and not beat up the bearings, and check the cam for any looseness. Should be pretty tight. Go ahead and slide the cam out, maybe rotating it a little bit. Just take it easy and slip it out. Lifting up on the back of it as you go. Now there's our boy right there. Oh yeah, it's got a gash dug across it. Ruined. Yeah, slipped on out there. Got a new camshaft coming, so just do some cleaning, get any lint and loose stuff off of the block, spray out the cylinders, and start cleaning some of these mating surfaces up. Yep, that's a honey baby, alright. Oh. Yep, that is. That is definitely gouged out. Feel free to replace the cam bearings as needed. I've seen online ARP and some of them sells this thread chaser. It's an 11mm by 2.0 thread for the head bolts. So you got to clean all the sealant out of the threaded holes, so you don't, one, crack the block with a hole by doubling up the sealant, and two, to give it the right torque values. But I took a Dremel tool and cut a couple of spiral lines in this head bolt. Is in good shape, and it's doing a good job. This head bolt didn't have any damage on the end of it, and it wasn't rounded anywhere. And I wire brushed all the old Loctite off of it. And I'm going through each head bolt hole and taking a small screwdriver and picking the Loctite that piles up at the beginning of the threads. Some of them pretty scaly. All that white looking yellow down in there, just take a screwdriver and chip it away right at the start of the threads before I go in this cut bolt down in there, using a small screwdriver, and just stick it in there. And stuff just kind of breaks off. It's all, just don't get too wild and get in the threads. And then I'll take a blow off tool and blow the particles out of it. just be mindful that you're approaching a machine deck and not to run the screwdriver into it at any point, or pry against the edge of it while you're doing that if you do this. Or problems may arise. Some of this stuff's pretty baked on there. Been in there a while. A lot of loose stuff now. Take an air hose and blow that out. And then after I get all the loose stuff, I'll fill in the holes full of brake cleaner. And then hand run this bolt down till this top row of threads just disappears below flush of the deck. That's all that sticks out of the head. Or that's all that goes into the block is the last thread there. And kind of push on it noon, 3, 6, and 9 o'clock while you're putting it in to help facilitate it removing debris. I kind of push on it one way a little bit, not binding it up anywhere. Not too much stress on me. Directing it around once I get a few more particles, and with brake cleaner in it kind of flushes out as you're screwing the bolt down, so it displaces the fluid and packs some of the sediment out with it. But they're looking pretty good. The two are done anyway. And so on. There's only 28 more to go. These little ones, I'm not going to worry about them too much. They're just more or less to keep the oil down in this valley hole. Kind of trivial what they're doing. These sealing bolts, they're the critical ones for sure. And I'll probably take something and scrape some of the excess patches of carbon off the pistons while I got it upside down. Nothing too wild. I don't want to run into this deck. I'll probably drop the pistons down a little bit and just take a piece of plastic or something and rake loose stuff off, take an air hose to it. And that can cause some issues a little later on down the road. I've rolled the motor on its side. I'm taking a minute, just took some brake cleaner and gently washed the debris out around the top of the pistons and the cylinders. I think the cylinders are already starting to rust a little bit. And spray out the valley area while the paper towels are still covering the bores. And I'll turn it fully upside down and wash this center valley cover out. I see a piece of corrugated plastic made it down to the crankshaft. Get that out of there. And I'm going to take brake cleaner and spray out all the head bolt holes in preparation. Look, I run the bell housing bolt right in the head bolt hole. That's nice. But I'll do the other side that way. And while that's draining, I've took about a gallon of diesel fuel and put it in a tote, like a plastic container. This is over the road fuel. It's a little more better about cleaning. And I'm setting the rocker arms off one at a time in that, giving them a little bath. You can already, I've done 3 of them. You already see some debris coming off of them, and that over the road fuel will evaporate off after a day or two. Or you can spray them off with brake cleaner. They'll need pre-oiled before they're installed though. Now I'll do the other side, and whatever. I don't think the push rods really need it. I'll probably throw those lifter buckets in here and wash those off. and the pickup tube. I'll probably wash the oil pan out. Gasoline's the best policy for oil pans unless you use regular cleaner and a tank full of cleaning solution, and all this stuff will go in that. But the diesel fuel, it doesn't hurt seals, and kerosene will, it'll damage seals. And it's a Willie, so it's all part of the program. I've got all the head bolt holes cleaned out. Took about an hour, I guess. And I just took a 21/32 drill bit to the upper head bolts and just kind of give it a little spin and knock the sealant residue off the openings of them. So as I say, keep in mind you're on a machine surface, so don't get into the deck. I'll probably take a piece of plastic and scrape some of the carbon off the pistons that's sticking up. Anything that's actually got a form to it that's higher than the surface of the piston. Some on the bottom there, a little bit on the right, and so on. Carb cleaner works pretty good for loosening a lot of it up. I just wouldn't work on the rings so much on a worn motor. That gives cleaning off ice a new meaning. Well, the plastic itself won't hurt anything, but picking up carbon can, so you know, clean it off a lot. A particle-free engine is a happy engine. I'm going to use some aircraft grade paint stripper on the deck, loosen up some of that old head gasket material. That's how this corner used to look. I put some in the corners, and it's really defined the original grind marks in it. The deck cleaned up pretty nice. Still got the original machine lines, kind of sounds like a zipper. So I shouldn't have so much metal missing from cleaning it. Now that the decks are all cleaned up, I'll take a 2/1000 feeler gauge It's allowed 3,000, so I'm going to see if I can fish a 2 underneath of it, both straight across the cylinders and diagonal on them. That's why scraping this gristle off the edges is going to come in handy for measuring, particularly the diagonal. But let's make sure the ends of the straight edge don't have a gap under them before you start. So looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. It's working. Okay. Yeah, I don't see a problem there between cylinders. It's probably 1/1000 because that ain't bad. I've got a maximum limit of 3 between cylinders and 4/1000 over the whole length. But they're all in pretty good shape. Go diagonal. Good. Got no problem there. Going from head bolt corner to head bolt corner. About 1,500, I guess. Just walking it with it. Got a little bit there. Sticky. Not check it for 3/1000, but I don't think it's going to be a whoop-de-doo. I don't think it's going to be a big deal. And the 3 absolutely will not fit under anything. 3/1000 filler gauge. I'm good to go on this side. I'll do the other bank the same way. This deck was identical to the other side. Just about 0.5 here, maybe 1/1000. It's tolerable. Good all over, nice and flat. Proceed on with the rest of the work. Mouse over the video and hit the circle I to continue to part 2 of the video.